Hey folks, Brian here. I just want to thank you guys for listening and also contributing to the show in your various ways, whether it be through emails or likes and follows or reviews or in some cases monetary donations. I want to thank each and every one of you. You guys are the inspiration for me keeping this going. So let's keep right on rolling into 2021. Later. I'm home.
Welcome to the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast, an introspective look at video gaming from the classic era to the modern day. Now here is your host, Brian.
Hey folks, what's going on out there? Brian here, and this is episode number 35 of the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. Let's see, when last we left off, which was right at the beginning of the new year, I think, about 3 weeks ago. Let's see. I had put in my notice at work, but I had to call in for a Friday last week, as a matter of fact. Basically, I woke up with a severe headache and severe nausea, and there was no way I could actually get it together and go to work. I texted my boss, I texted my managers, and because I was already on short time, my manager just said, forget it. Or not my manager, my boss said, just forget it. We're going to end this right now rather than go through this for another 4 days, which is when my last day was. It was this Wednesday past, as a matter of fact, the 27th, or excuse me, the 28th. And so yeah, I was out of a job and I've been home for the last week. On the bright side, I completed everything for my job. My online orientation starts Monday, and then on Tuesday I go in for more paperwork and training, and then Wednesday through Friday I ride with somebody to do the route, and then I think the following Monday I'll be on my own. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. Um, I've been doing medical courier work for a year and a half to this point, almost 2 years as a matter of fact, and now I'm at a job where I get to do the exact same thing that I was doing beforehand, except now I'm getting paid more to do it. Still trying to finalize getting a car. There was a car on Carvana that I wanted, but they are taking a very long time getting that thing fully inspected and possibly repaired. So I'm now exploring my options and seeing if there's something else I can get, because I'm going to need a car to get to and from work, even though this place is only about a mile from my house. I don't feel like walking to and from the place in dead of winter for the next couple of months, so I'm just trying to get it all together. Um, with my uh, previous job, I was able to take a car home, and that enabled me to do my home care and also to do grocery shopping. And with that being done, I've been having to take the bus to and from to do home care. The good thing is that my client was right on a bus line, so I basically have to just take two buses to get there. And to get home, it only takes about an hour, hour and a half tops, but still, it's one of those things. And I also got a flu shot, which was mandatory for my job, and um, that knocked me on my butt for like the last 2 days, ever since I got it on Wednesday. Or excuse me, ever since I got it on Thursday, I've been knocked out. it's been not very good. So I haven't been having the energy or wherewithal to do very much. I mean, gaming wise, I've just been playing Elite Dangerous and Star Trek Online, and that's been pretty much it. Um, I did see on Facebook that my favorite arcade, the arcade in Brighton, is raising their prices, which is understandable because, they were out of business for the better part of 6 months. Um, so, yeah, I think they're trying to recoup some of the losses that they've had. I mean, better this than them shutting their doors permanently. And Pinball Pieces still open and operating. As of right now, in regard to restrictions and so forth, the only thing that the governor has not fully opened, and at last I looked, she was talking about reopening that, was sit down dining. That's the only thing now. Um, Vaccinations are slowly being rolled out. With my new job, it's an optional thing right now, but after a while, I think it will become mandatory. Um, and we'll see about that. I'll probably end up getting it just because, um, with my job, and I think I'll be actually going to hospitals as well as clinics. I will have to probably get that vaccine, and I'll just get it, and we'll go from there. Um, let's see. I did check my emails and everything else. Nothing out there right now. So once again, if you have any thoughts, questions, ideas, games you want me to talk about or cover, um, anything of that nature, just get a hold of me. arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. Also, I have a phone number for voicemails. That number is 734-743-2433. Also, social media is still ongoing as we speak. I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. On Facebook, just do a search for Confessions of an Arcade Addict. It'll take you right to the page. There is a discussion group that goes along with it. Your participation would be highly appreciated. On Twitter, my handle is arcadeaddict_B. Instagram is at arcadeaddictbrian, and Tumblr is tumblr.com/blog/confessions of an arcade addict. So there are, of course, various ways to get a hold of the show if you're so inclined, and please do so. Because, like I said, it gets a little lonely just, talking out here and not having a lot of interaction to go along with it. So anyway, let's get right on to the show. This is a rather personal, or at least the first part of it is. This is a rather personal episode to this podcast, one that I was really not looking forward to doing, and you'll understand why. Let's go into story time.
Our bodies are given life from the midst of nothingness. Existing where there is nothing is the meaning of the phrase, form is emptiness. That all things are provided for by nothingness is the meaning of the phrase, emptiness is form. One should not think that these are two separate things.
Story time, the dark side of arcade addiction. I realized when I first was putting together topics about this, about my experiences with video games starting at an early age, all winding up all the way through the present day where I'm now 52 years old, I knew I was going to have to cover everything, meaning the good times, the bad times, and, everything in between. And so, I was dreading this one. I wrote the outline for this probably about a year ago, and it was really hard to go back through my memories and go back into all the things that I did and some of the things that happened to me because I was such an arcade junkie. And, I'm not going to go into really deep detail because that's just too revealing and too humiliating to me personally. But I will tell you that, yeah, as much as I enjoyed my times at the arcade and the people I've gotten to know and the friendships that I have developed through the years, there's a dark side to this, for sure. I won't play the victim and say that video games led me down a wrong path, but yeah, I became addicted to video games pretty quickly. I want to say it really started when I was probably about 10 or 11 years old, and it just kept going from there. My need to play just one more game led me to do things that I wasn't proud of, and I'm embarrassed to be revealing it to you now. I mean, I lied to family members, friends, complete strangers, anything that could get me to the arcade, which is where I wanted to be more than any other place on the planet. And that's how it was when I was probably about 11, and it really started going downhill from there. Um, I constantly would sneak out of my house, most often when I was grounded, you know, because I just didn't want to spend all my time in the house, and I wanted to go to the mall. I wanted to go to Spanky's. I wanted to see if I could, get a hold of Mark and see if he was going to Milford Rec later on in the evening and things like that. Um, you know, on those days that when I would just sneak out of the house when I was grounded, I would just go to the mall, spend all day there from open to close, and things like that. And even on the normal days, quote unquote, like during the summer, that's more of a normal day because, well, I'll talk about it later. Um, on those days where I would go to the mall at 9 o'clock in the morning and just walk the mall with the older people until the store started to open at 10 o'clock, and especially the arcade. Um, and I would spend literally all day at the mall from 9 o'clock in the morning to probably about 9:30 at night if I didn't, call it a day early and head home and just, sort of make my way down Main Street and, you know, um, I would stop at Bolorama to rest, especially during the summertime, and I would get water from the water fountain, and I would just sit down there and rest for about 15 minutes before I would make my way home from there. Which I think Bolorama I think was about a third of the way from the mall to my house, or if in reverse, 2/3 of the way to the mall from my house. Um, but yeah, I mean that's what I would do. And on those times where I would spend all day at the mall literally and my legs and feet were too sore to make the walk home, I would hitchhike. And I remember being at the uh, entrance slash exit to Trumbull Mall, right there on the corner of the entrance to the mall and Main Street, and just got the thumb out and everything like that. And I mean, I was lucky. I was very lucky. I constantly put myself in danger, even though I didn't think did so at the time. God only knows I was a notorious shoplifter at the mall. I mean, I'm not proud of this, but yeah, I didn't get caught very often. And usually, you know, I would just work it out and, not work it out, but I would just, stay away from the mall for like, a month, maybe 2 months, and then just go to other places like Spanky's and stuff. And just, I would sort of worm my way back in there. And then I would behave myself for a while. But I mean, yeah, the Liggett, not the Rexall drugstore, the Woolworths, couple of other places in the mall I would constantly shoplift from. I mean, especially it would be more foodstuffs, more often candy than anything else. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I would do that all the time. Um, I stole from almost everybody that I knew. Immediate family, distant family, friends of the family, complete strangers, you name it. Like I said, I started skipping school as early as fifth grade. There were underlying reasons for my motivation to do that, but I'm not going to get into it because that's another embarrassing aspect to my life back then. But yeah, when I skipped school and I wasn't legitimately sick, 99 times out of 100, I would either go to the mall or go to Spanky's. That's just what I would do. And this just continued all the way through to when I finally quit high school in 1985. Um, the majority of money that was given to me or I had earned when I was a kid going into my teen years, most of it, I'd say probably about 75% of it, went down the coin slots. And that's just how it was. um, I have memories of when I was 7 years old, when I was living on the east end of Bridgeport at my stepfather's place, um, just hanging out at the dip and sip all the time, and I would try to panhandle for quarters and things like that. I mean, I'm lucky I didn't get my dumb ass kidnapped or beaten up or worse, because that was a really rough area. My need and desire to learn this or that game led me to be pretty socially awkward, and I was a shy and quiet kid to begin with. You know, when when my teenage years started in 1984 yeah, excuse me, not 1984, excuse me, 1982, when I turned 13. Oh, I'm sorry, 1981. I'm sorry, 81 when I turned 13. And of course, when you already notice girls, especially growing up in my neighborhood, because we were we just were physically advanced even though we weren't emotionally advanced. Let's put it that way. We had an interest in the opposite sex at early ages. But yeah, I was a shy and quiet kid. I was awkward, and of course, you know, with the advent of hip hop in the early 80s in my hometown, all of a sudden you had to have everything, going right for you. Like when you're like 16 years old, you had to have money, you had to have a car, you had to be smooth, you had to be able to talk, to a girl and really schmooze with her, and I was none of those things. That's just true. Um, you know, my addiction to video games was so strong. I mean, that was just so strong. If it wasn't video games, it was Dungeons and Dragons or comic books, like I've said in previous episodes. Those were my main obsessions through my teenage years. And, but my desire for video games and hanging out at arcades was the leader by far. That's where the majority of any money I got went into, like I already said. And because of it, I was made fun of, or I was looked down upon by people. Members of my own family, and you know, my uncles were constantly trying to get me to straighten up and fly right, so to speak. And I just wouldn't listen. It would go in one ear out the other, and as soon as they were done talking to me, I would just, separate myself from them, and I would just go and do my own thing, and I didn't care. That's just how it was. A lot of the kids who I grew up with, and a lot of the kids that were my contemporaries, who were regulars in the arcade, they would constantly harass me. Me being an emotionally sensitive kid, didn't take much to upset me back in those days. Um, you know, and of course they wouldn't even say anything to me if they didn't have their friends around. It was like that, you know. I mean, and that's how I knew there was a racial motivation to it, because if they see me by themselves, they don't say a word to me. But yeah, as soon as they've got two or three of their friends around, then they start flapping their gums. That culminated with them giving me my arcade nickname, which stuck for years until I grew up enough to say, well, the only person who can make me miserable about the situation is myself. And if I allow these people that power over me, then I deserve what I get, don't I? And I finally just, got them to stop calling me that. Unfortunately, it took until I was probably about 16, 15 or 16 before they stopped. But, yeah, I had that nickname for a good, 3, 4 years, maybe even as many as 5. But yeah, that's just how it was. Um, my point of all this is that this wasn't all fun and games when it came to video games and arcades. I had good times to be sure, sometimes even great times, but there was there were not some there were some not so good times as well. There was a time or two in my childhood and teenagers that, you know, someone was looking out for me because there were a couple of situations where, there was a really good chance I would not make it home unharmed or anything like that. There's one incident in particular where I hitchhiked home from the Midway, and this guy picked me up, and he, as we're driving back, he's talking to me, and I kind of started getting that feeling that he had a rather unnatural interest in me. And when we got to my neighborhood, I had him let me off like a block and a half from my house or something like that. I basically said, "This is my house," even though it wasn't my house. And I got out of his car. He basically offer me $20 to continue going with him. And at that point, I knew what he wanted. I did everything I could to get out of that situation. You know, and once he pulled up to the house, and I said, I thanked him for the ride and everything, and he pulled off, and he drove off down the street. I ran home. And I did not hitchhike for quite some time after that. Yeah, but it's stuff like that. That's what my desire for video games was leading me to. It was leading me down a wrong path. And it took me a long time to kind of get my video game Jones under a semblance of control. And it's one of those things where I had to realize that, I am just not doing the right things for myself here. And because I'm not doing these things, I'm getting myself into trouble. So yeah, I kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on it. But then again, there was the binge of 1982, which I already spoke about, which is one of the more embarrassing times of my life, because I had more or less a video gaming blackout where I just dumped a whole bunch of money down the coin slots, and I didn't realize I did it until I got home. Got home later that night, and then I went and did it again the next day. Things like that. Um, but I was lucky. I didn't. The bad things that could have befell me didn't. Someone was looking out for me, but because I certainly wasn't looking out for myself past a certain point. So, but I made it through okay. Um, Through the years, I've seen the results of video gaming addiction uh, in the news, especially with the MMORPGs like EverQuest and Warcraft back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And how people's marriages were dissolving over this game. And it's just cases of child neglect and things like that. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. you know Even though I did some things to feed my arcade Jones back in the day, you know I couldn't even imagine being that was a whole new level of addiction to me, that you could you know, basically destroy your relationship with another person that you've, made certain vows to, or, neglecting taking care of your child. I could never in 1,000 years, now that I'm a father and I've been a father for 6 years, I could never see myself being that kind of person to where I would completely neglect this young child who's looking to me for, you know, food, clothing, a place to live, love and support and all of those things. And I can't imagine neglecting all that just because you're going on a going on a raid for like the fourth time in the last 2 hours or something like that. Just to get the epic level items, or getting your character up to maximum level or anything like that. That's where I think I knew that I kind of outgrew my video game addiction. As much as I love video games now, and I still get a little thrill going through me when I go into an arcade, especially one that I haven't been to before. I mean, I already know that when I go to Chicago, once this whole COVID thing is under control, I'm going to probably do a little bit of regression, but I do know my limits. I'm a full-grown adult. I've got a child who's looking up to me and who's always looking, who's always who's in need of support from me constantly, and I'm not going to fail him or let him down. That's how I know that I've got a handle on my video game addiction. you know but hey, um when I was reading these stories in like the 90s and 2000s, by that time I was fully aware of my addictive tendencies, and I knew to stay away from those games, and I actually did. I mean, um my friend Robert he was an early adopter of World of Warcraft, if I'm not mistaken. And when I went over his house in 2001, and I just sat with him for the better part of a day while while he played Warcraft and stuff like that. you know I knew it wasn't for me. It just wasn't there. I mean, I was more happy with action RPGs like Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance, and things like that, where it was like a platforming game, a 3D platforming game with Dungeons and Dragons woven into it. That was my jam. But either way, um, but yeah, I know where my priorities are. I couldn't say that when I was like 15, 16, 17 years old. You could ask anybody who knew me back then; they would tell you. But that's how it was. Okay. Now that I've got that off my chest, I'm going to immediately pivot into Are You Experienced?
I'm too old for this. Hiding in front seats like a teenager.
Hoppy, I think I'm getting too old for this stuff.
I'm getting too old for this.
Listen, you was born too old for this.
I'm getting too old for this.
I'm getting too old for this. Lying wet-arsed in the heather chasing other men's cattle.
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
Maybe we're getting too old for this. What do you think, huh?
I'm not too old for this shit. I'm not too old for this shit. You will not. We're not too old for this shit.
We're not too old for this shit.
We're not too old for this. Say it like you believe.
We're not too old for this shit.
Yeah.
We're not too old for
I'm
this
not gonna
shit.
buy a hemorrhoid cushion.
We're not too old for this shit.
Are You Experienced? WWF Wrestlefest. This is one of my all-time favorite wrestling games, just like its sequel, or like its prequel, WWF Superstars. But let's get right into it, shall we? Getting right onto Wikipedia. Okay. WWF Wrestlefest is a professional wrestling arcade game released by Technos in 1991, featuring stars from the World Wrestling Federation. The game was distributed by Technos in Japan and North America, and by Tecmo in Europe and Australasia. It is the sequel to Technos' previous WWF game, WWF Superstars. Compared to Superstars, WrestleFest adds a variety of different wrestlers to the roster, as well as enhanced graphics and sound. There are more voice samples, including commentary and pre-match introductions by WWF ring announcer Mike McGurk. The voiced cutscenes featuring Gene Okerlund for Superstars returned as well. In February 2012, THQ released a remake of the game for iOS featuring both current and former wrestlers, retitled WWE WrestleFest. Let's see, the gameplay. Just like its predecessor, WrestleFest simulates professional wrestling matches. The game adds support for up to 4 simultaneous players and the ability to insert more credits into the machine to buy energy. 2 modes of play are available. In the new Royal Rumble mode, the player picks one superstar and takes him through a Royal Rumble match. In Saturday night's main event mode, the player must pick 2 wrestlers to form a tag team and take them through a series of matches, including a title match with the Legion of Doom. In this mode, the player can perform numerous double team moves. Additionally, after a team member has been on the apron for a certain length of time, they will power up, temporarily giving them the ability to win all grapples and inflict more damage than usual. The game features 10 selectable wrestlers. Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and Big Boss Man make their return from WWF Superstars, with Jake the Snake, Roberts, Earthquake, Mr. Perfect, Sergeant Slaughter, Demolition Smash, and Demolition Crush available as new characters, with the Legion of Doom, Hawk, and Animal making an appearance as a non-selectable boss tag team. Each wrestler has their own signature maneuvers. Let's see the reception. Replay reported WWF WrestleFest to be the second most popular arcade game at the time. In Japan, Game Machine listed it on their December 1st, 1991 issue as being the 3rd most popular arcade game at the time. Yeah, that's about right. Zero gave the game a 3 out of 5, saying while the graphics were cartoony, the game does still, quote, manage to project the aggression of life in the ring. Interesting quote. Sinclair user rated the game with an 88 out of 100, citing the game's variety of characters and high replay value. Computer and Video Games also gave the game a positive review, describing the gameplay as highly enjoyable. Let's see, follow-up titles, which actually gave me a little bit of news, which I'll get into. But first, THQ released a remake for the game for the iOS under the title WWE WrestleFest on February 21st, 2012. The remake introduced a roster composed of more contemporary WWE stars such as The Undertaker, John Cena, Randy Orton, and Rey Mysterio, along with former performers including The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Jake Roberts, and Randy Savage. In addition to the return of the Saturday night's main event and Royal Rumble game modes, the remake also featured a standard one-on-one tag team, steel cage match, and gauntlet match types, along with online multiplayer. The game also included Road to WrestleMania mode, where a player goes through a series of matches to try and win various WWE titles. A series of downloadable content packs were released for the game, featuring additional wrestlers and arenas. Versions for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Android were also announced but never released, and that's a shame. I think that would have really made this game a lot more popular if they actually were able to release it for those systems, but I think this is right when I think THQ had finally... No, that was like 2016. Never mind. I thought I had something there. Let's see. In 2019, developer Retrosoft Studios acquired a license from Arc System Works, rights holder of the original arcade game, to dub their upcoming title Retromania Wrestling, the official sequel to WrestleFest. Lacking a WWE license, the title instead features wrestlers from various independent wrestling promotions. Retrosoft also acquired the rights to use characters from Mat Mania, a previous wrestling game developed by Technos Japan. And when I read this little piece of information, I immediately did a search on online, and I found the Retromania Wrestling site. online, and they're going to release this game for Steam. Apparently, it's coming out on February 21st, a little more than 3 weeks from now. So I am certainly looking forward to this. I'm probably going to end up getting it. Everything that I've seen from the graphics, the still graphics from this game, they really nailed it as far as it being um, being a wrestling game that's right along with, in the genre of WrestleFest and its predecessor, Superstars. And I'm really, really happy about this, and I'm looking forward to getting this. I'm going to find a way to get a few dollars to be able to pay for this, because, yeah, I am all about this, for sure. Okay, so any thoughts, comments? If you played WrestleFest back in the day, get a hold of me, Arcade Addict Brian at gmail.com, and we can talk about it. So, with that done, let's pivot right into time for some Stragedy.
What happened?
Good bad tactics, Mr. Ryan.
Oh, I never should have doubted you, boy.
There's a plan in everything, kid. And I love it when a plan comes together.
It's about time for me to employ a little Stragedy.
Okay, time for some Stragedy. Just like its predecessor, WWF Superstars, this game is about wearing your opponents down as quickly as possible and pinning them, and winning the match. Your wrestler has 3 stages of attacks, each stage coming when you have inflicted a certain amount of damage on your opponent. The first stage are very basic moves like flying mares and body slams. The second stage are moves that are signatures to each wrestler, like Ted DiBiase's suplex, the Ultimate Warrior's pile driver, Hulk Hogan's atomic drop, or Mr. Perfect's back suplex or standing drop kick. When you've gotten your opponent worn down enough, depending on the situation, your wrestler will go for his finishing move, which usually inflicts enough damage to lead your opponent to being hurt enough to be pinned for the 1-2-3. Another indicator of this is seeing your opponent lying on the mat at a 45-degree angle. Go for the pin immediately and use your tag team partner to block the opponent's partner from coming in to break up the pin attempt. The only different match in the series of matches in tag team mode is the steel cage match, which is third in order. It's 2 normal matches, then you do the steel cage match. Now you cannot whip your opponent into the ropes because they will crash into the cage and fall down. Same thing applies. Wear them down quickly and before they start their comeback. The best way to do this is to keep one wrestler in the ring long enough until the partner gets powered up. Then you immediately tag in, and then from that point you should be able to inflict enough damage on your opponent to put him in danger of being pinned. And if you do it right, yeah, they won't get up. That's for sure. I mean, I have a complete system with a certain tag team, and I'll talk about that in a minute. There's one more match that is a little bit harder than the first 3. Then it's on to the champions, Animal and Hawk, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. My favorite tag team of all time, by the way. They're very hard to beat in this game because they can dish out a crap ton of punishment, and they can take it too. Both of them use power moves to stack up the damage, but you're in for a world of hurt if they have your wrestler down and out. If you're fighting Animal in the ring and you're badly hurt, they will set you up for their patented Doomsday Device double team finisher. Animal will grab you, tag in Hawk, then he will put you on his shoulders while Hawk climbs the top rope and leaps off with a flying clothesline while Animal flips you over at the same time. When they hit you with this, it's all she wrote because you're just not going to kick out of it. Just get another credit ready because they will get the 3 count for sure. If you have the skill and or credits to beat them, you gain the tag team titles, but your battle has only begun because you have to go through 4 more matches to beat the game. Then once again, you have to square off against the Legion of Doom, and they're twice as hard to beat this time. So, yeah, I've beaten the game. I think, oh god, how many credits did I use? I think I used like 3 credits. That's the most I've ever that's the least credits I've ever used on this game to beat it. And the tag team mode is fun. The Royal Rumble mode, it's just like Wikipedia said. You pick one wrestler, and basically you are in the ring with. I think they started off that way. I think they go complete Royal Rumble rules. So it's you and another wrestler for a certain amount of time. Then someone else comes into the ring, and then now you got 3 wrestlers in the ring, and then so on and so on. What you want to do is just be able to wear your opponents down enough to where either you can get a pinfall on them, or you can toss them over the top rope and eliminate them from the match. Playing this mode, I think I beat it on 1 credit, and I got, I think, what was it, 10 eliminations out of 12 wrestlers, which isn't bad. Of course, a perfect game is 12 wrestlers, or excuse me, 11 wrestlers, because with the Legion of Doom being included in this match, that makes 12, so you would only get 11 eliminations. But yeah. The Royal Rumble mode is fine, but I'm a big proponent of the tag team mode for sure. Let's see. Let's see if there's you got any sort of strategies of your own about this game. By all means, get a hold of me, arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. And lastly, we shall go into arcade review. Okay, arcade review. The Florida Mall Arcade in Orlando, Florida. Okay, quick primer once again. I rate an arcade on 5 criteria: location, selection, ambiance, functionality, and value. Location, fairly self-explanatory. Where is it? Is it easy to get to? Things like that. Does it have, parking, good parking and stuff like that? Selection. Do they have a lot of machines? Do they have a good cross-section representing all of the eras of arcade games? And I will rate that, because there have been places that don't have a lot of machines, but what they have is a good cross-section, all the classics, plus a few from the 90s, a couple from the 2000s, so forth. It all depends. There are some places that just have a lot of machines, and they get high marks for that, because it's kind of hard not to have a good cross-section when you have like 50, 60 machines in a place, things like that. Ambiance. Is there music playing over the PA? Is there art or pinball back glasses or things like that to kind of draw the eye and help with the immersion of the place? I mean, if you're of my age or older, a good arcade will be playing 80s music in the PA, and there'll be art of various types along the place. The arcade in Brighton does this brilliantly, by the way. Every time I'm in there and I start playing certain games, I start hearkening back to, when I first played the game, back when it was first released. Is the staff helpful? Do they just not sort of care? Are they just there to collect a paycheck, or do they actually care about any issues you might have? Things like that. Let's see, functionality. Do the machines work? Do they work well? Do they look kind of beat up, or are they, just generic cabinets with the game in it? Could it be a hack of some sort? Things like that. And of course, value. Does the place run on quarters? Do they run on tokens? Do they have, a gift card, or not gift card, but a credit card sort of thing, like how Dave & Buster's does it? Or do they have the free play option where you pay one fee and you can stay there as long as you like? I mean, those are the prevalent modes of business for arcades these days. So yeah, you take all these, each one of these criteria is rated from 1 to 10 with half points coming into play, and you add everything up and average it out by 5, and you have a total score at the end. Okay, so let's get right on to it. Location 7.5. The Florida Mall is on Orange Blossom Trail just south of Sand Lake Road, south side of Orlando. Multiple bus lines come through here, at least, I want to say 4 bus lines at the time came through there, so you could get there fairly easily. Orange Blossom Trail is one of the main thoroughfares through Orlando, and so, and Sand Lake Road is actually another one. It wasn't quite as developed back in the 90s as I believe it is now. But there were things being put up along Sand Lake Road, heading eastbound from Orange Blossom Trail along the way. I used to live fairly close to Sand Lake Road at one point when I lived in Orlando, so it was like a 10 or 15 minute bike ride down Sand Lake Road to get over to the Florida Mall. And of course, I worked at the Best Buy, which is across the street, across Orange Blossom Trail from the Florida Mall. So yeah, I was there often. Let's see. Yeah, so this was located just south of Sand Lake Road on Orange Blossom Trail. International Drive was 2 miles down the road from this location, and a lot of tourists would come into this area because there were, aside from the mall, there were a lot of standalone stores like the Best Buy that I worked at and other places, and we would have tourists from around the world coming in to buy things, which was kind of cool. I call this area, the area over Sand Lake Road and International Drive, which is like another 2 miles down the road from Orange Blossom Trail. I call that tourist hell because, yeah, that's where a lot of the tourists would stay. And a lot of the hotels over there. And of course, there were attractions over there. They had Wet and Wild and other places for, tourists to go to. And of course, there was the McDonald's that I've mentioned previously, right on Sand Lake Road, that had an arcade room in it, and then there was another arcade in somewhere around International Drive and Sand Lake Road. I can't remember exactly because I only went there twice, and I couldn't remember enough about it to do more than mention it here in passing. So yeah, I give it a 7.5 because yeah, it's very easy to get to. Selection 7.0. The arcade in Florida Mall was a relatively small place. Machines lined the walls, but the cross section was really good. I think they had I want to say 25 to 30 machines, but they had a really good cross section. All of the areas, the eras of, all the arcade eras were well represented. And they would get new games fairly frequently. This is where I really discovered an NBA Jam tournament edition, and I enjoyed playing that game. It was a marked improvement over the original NBA Jam. But yeah, that's where I did it. Let's see, ambiance 6.5. There was some video game art on the walls, around the machines, and I think they had some music playing through the speakers. I think it was like a local pop station, if I remember right. I mean, not too bad, but not great. I'll give it slightly above average marks, because at least they tried. Functionality 7.5. The machines they were always in good to excellent condition. And if a machine went down, it got fixed pretty quickly. It wasn't down for more than, I would say, probably 3 weeks if I remember right. So yeah, that gives them above average marks for sure. And value, I give that a straight 5 because it ran on quarters. There were no, because they didn't run on tokens, there were no specials or anything like that. That was the one good thing about, places like the Fun Machine. They ran on tokens, and they did give you a little bit more for your money rather than just giving you 4 tokens for $1. That's why places like the Fun Machine get higher marks for value. So yeah, strictly average marks here. You add that up and you average it out, and the total score is 6.7. This arcade was a good start to a run, especially if my roommate and I were both either getting off of work because we both worked in this area in the mid-90s, or if we were starting a run here and heading over to the Fun Machine in Pine Hills, or maybe going up to Fashion Square Mall to wrap it up. It was more or less a typical mall arcade, and its small size and its use of quarters keeps me from rating it higher. They always had a lot of business as locals and tourists alike would come in to play the games, and it was always jumping because of that. It was a pretty decent arcade. It really was. I mean, it wasn't great, it wasn't fantastic, but it was certainly pretty decent. It makes me wonder if they still have an arcade in that mall, because I think the Florida Mall is still there and still operating. I know that when the last time I was in Orlando, which unfortunately was 11 years ago, Fashion Square Mall was still doing business, but with the way things are, especially with the rise of Amazon and Walmart and stuff, the typical shopping mall is a dying breed, unfortunately, and that's just sad. Especially considering how much the shopping mall impacted my life. As I talked about in the previous segment. But anyway, so yeah, I give it a 6.7. Good, but not great. All right, so if you lived in the Orlando area, you went to this mall, hey, get a hold of me. Tell me what you remember of it, because I'd love to hear from you about it. ArcadeAddictBrian@gmail.com. Okay, and that's it for episode 35. I'm only moderately mortified and embarrassed, so I guess it wasn't that bad after all. So let's see, moving on to episode 36. Let's see what we got going on here. I've got a top 10s. I have a I've got an arcade rundown, as a matter of fact, that I actually have to type out. Ooh, I've been remiss. I better get on the stick here. And of course, I've got home systems, and also I've got an episode of the Silver Ball talking about another pinball machine I grew up with. So, looking right ahead to it, and I'm looking forward to doing this for you. So, until next time, this is Brian saying, have fun out there when you can. Good gaming. Be safe. Be smart. Things will get better. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the naysayers. It's going to get better. Just hang in there. Au revoir.
This has been the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. All music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his music at incompetech.com. You can contact the show by email at arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 734-743-2433. Until next time, you have been listening to the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. See you then.